People in India have until the end of the day to hand in high-denomination banknotes, which are being taken out of circulation. Last month, the government surprised the country by announcing it was withdrawing the two most popular banknotes, which account for more than 80% of all cash. The move was designed to tackle corruption and tax evasion, but it has caused widespread chaos. Well, I can talk now to Kevin Lear, who had to cut short what should have been a 6-week holiday in India when it became impossible to use his banknotes. Kevin, thank you very much for talking to us today. This should have been the holiday of a lifetime, a real adventure. I think you were travelling around India on your motorbike. Tell us what went wrong.
Well, I was in Gurgaon for the first week and then travelled in the beginning of November. Then travelled down to Jaipur. And the first night in the hotel, there it was on social media to say that from midnight tonight, the 500 and 1,000 rupee notes would no longer be valid, which I thought was a joke. Getting up the next morning, it certainly wasn't a joke because it was reality. And to cap it all, they'd said that you could change the notes in any bank or any post office. But the following day after the demonetisation, nowhere was open. You couldn't get anywhere. So they left it for 24 hours before anywhere opened. And then it was just an absolute nightmare where the queues were just biblical. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. In fact, I found the whole experience quite shocking.
And what sort of behaviour did you witness when you were in those queues?
Well, I didn't go in any of the queues because and please don't think I'm being racist here, but as a white man, I would have felt rather awkward in those queues, where I witnessed fighting. I witnessed them trying to push through a very narrow gap that some security people were trying to maintain. There was desperation, absolute desperation, and this continued on and on and on. And in Jaipur, the traffic is, should we say, rather interesting because there's so much of it. And the roads were just half empty. The whole place just about came to a standstill. We were going into stores to try and get food and we couldn't because they wouldn't take the notes.
So even notes that weren't going out of circulation, you couldn't actually use those because shopkeepers didn't necessarily have the change to give you?
Well, they didn't want them because they couldn't change them in their mind instantly. The 500 and thousands, they didn't want, because they were then going to have to go to the bank to change them. So it created a situation that they didn't want to find themselves in either. Eventually, I did manage to get some money changed by a couple of Indian friends about a week later. And it then became the 2,000 rupee note and the 100. Well, the hundreds were okay. People didn't have an issue with the hundreds, but nobody wanted the 2,000s because the shopkeepers just didn't have the change. They said you could use them in fuel stations. The queues were there for the whole day. If you got into a queue, you were going to be there for, I would have guessed, a good part of the day just to get fuel. It was just
Sorry, Kevin, I was just going to say how this ended up for you then was you having to make the obviously tough decision that this big adventure that you'd planned couldn't continue.
Well, there was a worry that should I go in, I was going into an area called Rajasthan, and there was a worry, could I get fuel? Could I buy food? What was going on, because I didn't have cash, and everybody was saying, well, just use your cards. Well, the UK cards were banned in the Indian ATMs. We couldn't even get cash out of the ATMs. The ATMs were running dry. So sitting there was two options. I either waited for it to right itself, which obviously it still hasn't, or come home. And so I had to change my flight and come home.
So it's interesting that you describe this image of the country standing still. This was, to you, the impact of this decision to take these two notes out of circulation.
Well, those notes are the most popular ones. And once you've taken them out, sorry, my phone's going. Once they've taken them out of circulation, then the smaller notes, not many people had that because a lot of transactions was done by the 1,000 and 500. And there was utter and sheer panic. There's no other way of describing it. It felt to me as if the country was imploding. They didn't know what to do. These poor people, they made their business by doing the transactions with cash. Cash is everywhere in the world. And all of a sudden in India, it wasn't. People burning the notes. There was images on the TV over there of people just throwing the notes in sacks in the back of carts and setting them on fire. People were dying in the queues because of the stress that they weren't going to be able to get the money to feed the families. It was devastation, in my opinion. Yeah, it was a crazy situation that I just don't understand.
Kevin, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Kevin Lear in Cumbria. And let's discuss this some more. With me is Neha Bhatnagar from the BBC's Hindi service. Neha, there's just a couple of hours left now, isn't there, until this deadline? Is there evidence of last-minute panic as people try to get rid of these notes that are going out of circulation?
Well, to be honest, that panic has been going on for a while now because the government has changed the rules so many times that the Reserve Bank of India is jokingly being called Reverse Bank of India because the rules have been reversed so many times and changed so many times. And unfortunately, what Kevin experienced was a reality. I mean, I left London on the 8th night and landed in Delhi on the 9th morning. And that's what it was. It was chaos. I remember my mother frantically calling me and whatever little notes I had left in my house, because we're allowed to bring out small currency from India, had to scramble it all together and run. When we reached the airport, I was a bit, yeah, there might be places to change at the airport. There was nothing and there was no money even for taxi. But unfortunately, over these last 50 days, situation has improved, but only marginally. I mean, those queues are still pretty long. They're still very long. And like Kevin didn't stand in those queues for obvious reasons, but I did. I had to. I mean, I stood in those queues to get money out, and it was quite torturous. There were people who were very excited about this decision in the beginning and saying, yes, it's great. India does have a massive black money problem. But was this the only solution? Should it have been done this way? That is a question that's still unanswered, and we don't know what's going to happen after tonight.
And should it have been done so quickly? I think when this idea of taking notes out of circulation to try to deal with the black economy was conceived, it was envisaged that it would be done over quite a lengthy period. So is there going to be a political backlash, given that it's caused so many people such problems?
Yes, people do expect that there could be a political backlash because there are some upcoming big state elections. But more importantly, everyone is watching out now for what Prime Minister Modi will say tomorrow. Now, we are expecting some big announcements coming in from him tomorrow. So people are just waiting for New Year's Eve. In fact, there are jokes going around that, well, might as well just get in the bank queues tonight itself because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow now. And I think just the implementation of it, where the 2,000 rupee note, which was taken out to replace the existing notes, was not the right size to fit in the ATM machines. And so there were practical problems like that, which really made things hard. And even those services, such as doctors or chemists who were supposed to accept old currency, weren't really doing it, which caused a lot of problem to people. And could it have been done in a phased manner? A lot of people think probably not, because then, people could have looked for alternate ways to get rid of black money. But in the end, did it work? Did this kind of abrupt measure work in a country as vast, as massive as India? And with 86, these notes accounted for 86% of India's currency. Well, a lot of people are very unhappy about it.
OK, Neha, thank you very much. Neha Bhatnagar from the BBC's Hindi service.